It is my honor this evening to introduce the recipient of this year's John Paul II New Evangelization Award, the Honorable Paul D. Clement. I want to start by saying a few simple things about Paul, and then I want to offer a perspective on Paul by way of something written by C.S. Lewis. First, Paul is a husband, a father, a man of strong Catholic faith, and a patriot. With the backing of his wife, Alex, and their 3 boys, he has argued 113 cases in the Supreme Court. He has argued more cases there than any other advocate this century, and as we sit here tonight, he has at least 2 more arguments in the pipeline for this term. His arguments have helped to make new law in areas too varied and numerous to mention. And although Paul is not a culture warrior, many of his cases have directly advanced the cause of liberty under our Constitution. Among them are a number of leading religious liberty cases, cases involving the protection of the 10 Commandments, monument on state property, a case for the Little Sisters of the Poor, protecting their religious principles by and a case protecting a public school coach's First Amendment right to offer a personal prayer on school property following a football game. Paul's stat sheet is long, but impressive as it is only a fraction of the story. In 1944, C.S. Lewis gave a lecture at King's College in London. The lecture was entitled "The Inner Ring." The inner ring, says Lewis, takes many forms: belonging to a selective club, holding high political office, advising very important persons on a confidential basis, and so on. Lewis says that the desire for the inner ring affects all of us at some point, or at many points, and for at least some of us, it never goes away. Belonging to this or that inner ring, Lewis says, may itself be morally neutral, but the desire to belong is very often morally dangerous. This desire, he says, and I'm quoting, is one of the great permanent mainsprings of human action. And because it is that, he goes on to say, you may be quite sure of this. You may be quite sure of this. Unless you take measures to prevent it, this desire is going to be one of the chief motives of your life, from the first day on which you enter your profession until the day that you're too old to care. To which he also adds this, and again I'm quoting, of all the passions, the passion for the inner ring is most skillful in making a man who is not yet very bad become a very bad and do very bad things. The wish to be in or stay in the club, to be one of the few who really knows, will come to govern your most important decisions. Right? And the fear of being thrust out of that ring and back into the cold, right, will color your decisions and weaken your will. That fear, perhaps even imperceptibly, will cause you to make the wrong choice, the bad choice, at which point you are already down the road to becoming a bad person. And many who crave the inner ring ultimately do. Lewis goes on to say that the quest for the inner ring in your profession will break your heart unless you break it. He proposes only one way to do this. In your profession, he says, make the work itself your end. And if you do, you will presently discover that you will find yourself inside the only circle in your profession that really matters. You will be one of the sound craftsmen and the other sound craftsman will know it. C.S. Lewis could have been talking about Paul Clement. In 30 years of friendship, and with all of Paul's accomplishments, I have never observed that the seduction of the inner ring has ever impaired his legal judgment or compromised his personal integrity. To the contrary, he has sought to be, and he has become, a sound craftsman in exactly the sense Lewis describes. Now, no doubt, God has blessed him with a gift for argument. But Paul has developed that gift to a very, very high pitch. He works hard at his craft, especially in the rarefied air of Supreme Court advocacy, where there is little to no margin for error. Paul combines two traits that are seldom found in a single person: a scholar's command of the Constitution and Supreme Court case law, along with the practical lawyer's common sense art of persuasion. He grasps the big picture, and he learns the smallest detail. He understands the minds of 9 justices, he masters their prior opinions, and senses their predilections. He sees the implications of a rule or outcome as the justices themselves might be expected to see it. And then he takes all this material and shapes it into a roadmap for a decision that, he hopes, will persuade at least 5 justices. This is not genius or inspiration or even logic. This is craft. And in the end, he has no equals. Because Paul is not a prisoner of the inner ring, he has had the independence and the courage to make the right decisions time and time again in very trying professional circumstances. On 2 occasions during his years as a private sector lawyer, Paul represented clients asserting legal positions that became so unpopular in certain places that his law firms put him to a stark choice. Abandon your unpopular client or leave our law firm and take the unpopular client with you. On both occasions, and in the very, very best tradition of American law, starting with John Adams himself, Paul chose fidelity to the client over financial security and the benefits and comforts of his law firm partnerships. On both occasions, he started new firms while remaining loyal to the legal interests of those unpopular clients. And he did it all with his characteristic grace and good humor. The Supreme Court bar in which Paul practices is a very small, highly competitive group. I do not practice before the court, I wouldn't dare. So I asked a friend and colleague who is a Supreme Court practitioner to give me the insider's take on Paul Clement. It's fair to say of my colleague that she herself is among the 3 leading Supreme Court practitioners of our era. She emailed me back a response, and I want to get what she said exactly right. Quote, "Paul is the greatest advocate of all time." There is a sermon of St. John Vianney in which he says this: "Only the service of God will make us happy in the midst of life." And he goes on to say that serving God changes nothing in all that we have to do. On the contrary, we simply do better all the things we must do. Paul Clement has done the thing he was called to do, appellate advocacy, better. Better indeed than any other American lawyer of our time, perhaps of any time. It is my great privilege to introduce a man of independence, principle, and moral courage, a defender of religious liberty, and the soundest of sound craftsmen, the Honorable Paul D. Clement.